When it comes to movies, we usually form opinions about them before, during, and after the movie releases. We look forward to them if they carry our interest and determine if it's something that we would like or dislike. And when it comes to a studio like Pixar, they have always managed to create films that everyone would want to see, changing the realm of 3D animation to what we know today. Without it, we'd still be behind on that, where their impact should truly be appreciated today. But of course, in recent times, things haven't been the best for the very studio, most evident by their return to theaters in 2022 with a film like Lightyear, because for the past few years since 2020 and COVID, their films haven't quite reached people the way they used to, and that's not the fault of Pixar themselves at all, with an unexpected pandemic amidst other things, because the films for the most part aren't bad at all, still good by any other standard, even though it does focus on a more specific topic that others don't relate to, which is still the case for this point, but not actually bad at all, but how it's all been driven down by a horribly managed Disney that decided to thrust theatrical films to their streaming service to watch instead, unsure of the pandemic and making money on their own without those theaters. This then actually affected films where they wanted to release Soul, Luca, and Turning Red on Disney+, which culminated in Lightyear being the grand return instead to theaters that wasn't up to the Pixar standard that we should expect. Not completely a bad film in this case, but something that generally wasn't up to par and belonged more on Disney+ for the start compared to a film like Turning Red that was only released a few months prior when theaters were much more opened in 2022. It was just something you wouldn't expect from that very studio, and it actually failed as a result. And because of the box office failure of that film, it really changed the perception of Pixar dramatically by not providing the stories they once had, one that is unfortunately still going to return with its 5th film sometime in the future. And when they did something like that, they fumbled their trust badly in new films that they were going to produce, with the original one that rose over the horizon that was met with great skepticism with a film like Elemental. And that was something I myself actually fell into when I didn't feel interested in the story that was being presented in trailers, and neither did anyone else, just using the concept of the natural elements as a story for something we've already seen akin to a Romeo and Juliet one done thousands of times at this point. This was something I expressed many times in my earlier Pixar and Elemental videos, trying to find what is going on with the studio and why they weren't the same as before, all the while still keeping myself cautiously optimistic before the release of the film, because beyond what was the major story concerns for me about what it was, I was actually interested in the world and the visuals that it carried, the most stunning I've ever seen in a Pixar movie that reflected the diversity of cities across America and the world virtually, in a portrayal that is reminiscent of New York, a city I don't particularly like but really does have a unique story to tell, like this one actually could, and eventually it became one I actually liked and enjoyed when I saw it on opening day, actually impressed by some of its story that was different than what was being advertised at first, focused on the love of family alongside the love story that we all come to expect, being more than what they do to bring you actually here. But of course, unfortunately, because of the early reactions to the trailers like my own in the public and the mixed one at the Cannes Film Festival, Elemental actually opened to the lowest opening weekend at the box office for a Pixar film, the second one after the original Toy Story that came out in 1995, which of course does not account for inflation in that as well, making it a terrible downturn for Pixar amidst the public's eyes, where video after that point pointed out this shocking disaster where many feared it would lose a lot of money for the studio, considering that last year Lightyear only opened to $50 million and only made $118 million overall in the States domestically, and becoming a bomb that only grossed $226.4 million worldwide against a $200 million production budget, losing the studio an estimated $106 million. And when you saw Elemental only make $29 million in its first weekend, you really didn't have much hope for it at all to make such numbers, considering it too had a $200 million budget, and of course opening during the same time frame as the Spider-Verse did earlier the month, which became a major hit here in the States while mediocre around the world, where Elemental also opened alongside The Flash 2 that made $55 million during the same exact weekend, but also became a major box office bomb, almost making the same as Lightyear but with a tad higher budget as well, where the summer itself became the box office of flops and nothing more. But soon after this start, the weeks rolled on and the film actually kept making more money, more than people expected, having great legs instead, and officially passing Lightyear's own domestic total despite opening $20 million lower, and eventually also passing the Spider-Verse's own international box office total too, culminating in becoming a sleeper hit with over $484 million at the point of this recording, a point where it's also about to surpass Puss in Boots' overall total at the box office, which also became a sleeper hit. But the amazing thing about this and why it worked is because of a place known as Korea, and the director of the film, Peter Sohn, because when the film was released in the country, it had a fairly standard attendance, but when the film score came out, it actually started to leg out more in the country, attracting millions of people to see it and actually fall in love with it, where at this point, the film has attracted $7.2 million million admissions in the country alone, which is the third highest attended animated film in the country besides the 2 Frozen films released by Disney, equating to about 14% of the entire population of the country, becoming the second highest grossing film of the year, and by extent, becoming the highest grossing and admitted foreign film of the year in Korea, beating other animated films like Suzume and the first Slam Dunk from Japan. This is something none of us actually expected, especially ones who followed the box office community due to the promotion of the film itself amidst Disney's middling reception, where other films like Little Mermaid actually failed badly in the country, but actually came to understand it due to the nature of the film and the experiences that director Peter Sohn actually put into the film, reflecting on its own parents that actually culturally connected with many, specifically Asians and especially Koreans in this case, where his parents actually immigrated from Korea to America, where of course those back home in Korea saw those elements of the film that were similar to their own culture in an animated fashion and actually really loved it, and it's something I liked myself and actually connected to a bit knowing those elements, because I'm not Korean at all, but I am also part Asian, being part Filipino apart from my Hawaiian, considering that Hawaii itself is a state that does have a majority Asian population, where Filipinos are the second largest ethnic group, followed by Japanese and Chinese and Koreans after, where of course people describe the islands today as a melting pot of certain cultures and people from around the globe looking for new experiences for their own lives as to why they actually came here in the first place, where I myself just understood a lot of what these scenes meant and had appreciation for what many face in their own families and lives when they actually move to a new place to find something better, with keeping their culture. This is something especially seen with the Disney Plus documentary of the film that goes into more of Peter's experiences with his family that really strengthened those themes that were being presented and the ones I want to mention when diving into the film. It's something that is a nice journey to see after voicing so many characters in Pixar and being an animator for the studio, including the robber in The Incredibles, Emil from Ratatouille, Squishy from Monsters, Socks from Lightyear, and of course directing The Good Dinosaur. And with mentioning all this, do I think Elemental is a great Pixar film that stands with the classics of their own heyday? No, I really don't think it's quite at that level, and I did have problems with how the final act of the film was presented alongside other small elements of the film, but not as much as I would expect with how negative I actually was at first with the film's trailers, and still think it's an overall good film that will become another classic that many over the years will enjoy. With such beautiful animation and beautiful environments and music by Thomas Newman, who had done beautiful scores with Pixar in the past, I guess let's begin to discuss why the elements of Elemental actually worked. This of course begins with our 2 characters in Bernie and Cinder from Fireland immigrating to Element City to actually start a new life, where it automatically becomes clear it takes parallels of Peter's own story with his parents who left Korea to move to New York City where he was born. And one of the great elements about this part is how we are introduced to their language being Firish, which is done to show the clear ethnic differences of the elements of the city and who they are to bring the elements of their culture, something New York has in its own diverse city that we see today. And of course because of that, it's not actually going to be easy for them to move in, rejected at every turn for something that clearly shows xenophobia against the new Fire people, causing them to settle down with this rundown place to make their new home, leading to the birth of Ember and the birth of their shop. This is where the actual heart of the movie begins to unfold and take place, in the love of the family, starting with this new shop that will be their new dream in this new city. Just like how Peter's dad actually started out small, opening a grocery store from scratch and working his way to provide his family with this new business. This is clearly seen when she grows up working for her father, having this life provided by him, where she can actually take over one day to continue that legacy. This is also where one of the messages of the film comes into play, to appreciate what our parents did for us to bring us to this world, the sacrifices they make, where Ember awaits the day that she gets to run the shop in his place after growing up to the point where her father's age is catching up to him, where he clearly cannot afford to continue working due to his health. A representation of the hard worker who gave up a lot coming here and preparing for the next generation to actually succeed off of it. And what we see here is her struggle to control her own temper, to deal with the pressures of running a business in a small convenience store, trying to make sure everything is done right and perfect, while also showcasing us her talent and ability to shape and fix glass. The main thing to really highlight about this is how she tries to prove she is ready to take over and continuing the life her father and mother actually brought to her, something she's clearly good at, but also shows something more underneath that is left to be discovered in the entire film. An ever-present struggle to live up to your parents while also wanting to do what you want in your life, something that Peter actually wanted to show to put in culminating his goal and dream to becoming an artist and animator that we see here today, where his parents themselves himself actually did not want him to go for that, as they didn't see how it would actually earn a living for them from where they came from and where they were. And this is also where Claude, the most important character of the entire film, comes into play. Not for the fact he single-handedly saved the film as Disney marketing would like for you to believe, but also introduces Ember's character to the other world of other characters and the love that they could express that Wade would eventually bring. It's a stark contrast to where Ember lives for her family to impress them, rather than the love and passion that she should experience on her own. It's the point of change where she comes home after delivering, seeing her father cough a lot and ready to tackle the red dot sale. We see that she tries to keep calm but bottles up her rage, being not able to service everyone's requests, going down in the basement, exploding with her fiery temper, causing a water pipe to break where Wade actually shows up, a water element who turns out to be a city inspector who sadly has to write up violations for her dad's business, which of course is a bad thing for her, where she desperately chases after him because of those facts, and of course he's a water element whom her family absolutely hates because of that prejudice and the fact that the store would virtually be shut down. And of course, despite her best efforts, he still gets through and sends the violations out, but then actually was touched by Ember explaining that this shop was her dad's dream and would be killed by the fact that it was her fault with what she tried to do to run it. This sets Wade's character apart as a helpful element who sees beyond the race of others like water and fire, so he could do his best in the moment to actually help her even though her temper makes things worse for others. This is also the point where they decide to show the backstory of how Bernie and Cinder actually came to Element City. They lived alright in Fireland, putting everything into their new shop until a storm came to actually destroy it and bring it all down. Now having no choice but to move to actually find a better life to continue that dream. The last time he would actually see his home and his mother and father, representing the steps one takes moving from their home country to someplace else like America for many in this situation. Still trying to carry who they are as well as what we know with our own parents. A better life, but still trying to keep your culture intact to remember who you are. Something also represented in Cinder's family with her mother's dying wish for her granddaughter to marry fire. This is another element from Peter's own life, where his own grandmother's dying words actually was for him to marry Korean as well, showcasing more the pressures of living up to your family and what they believe in their own family culture, where, as we would see, she would instead open up for something quite different, just like many do in life, with the opportunity to fix things by how Wade brings Ember to a game which his boss attends to try and clear things up. This is a moment that expresses how Wade is able to connect with other people and seeing beyond who they are, to cheer them up and see the best in them rather than how others generally see the negatives instead. Something that contrasts with Ember's fiery temper that really allows his boss to actually let them solve the problem, where if they're able to find the seal and leak by the deadline, then the violations would be forgiven. And as a result, they tour the city in a hot air balloon to find the source of where it is, allowing her to open up more about her life and what Wade wants to do. The point of not knowing exactly where you're going, where in the case of Wade, he reveals after his father died, he really didn't know what he was going to do with his life, moving from job to job, while also appreciating the fact that Ember actually has a chance of where she would want to go, taking her father's shop and actually being set on doing so. And then discusses the fire-ish word, Dishok.
It means embrace the light while it burns, because it won't always last forever.
The addition of this word and line really showcases the importance of your family and living up to them, because it actually won't last forever, as we all know, where we won't be able to spend time with our parents or grandparents in this life much longer as we age, really trying to live up to honor them and prove our worth to continue living for the next generation. At least that's what I imply, because I know once a family member is gone, they are gone until you join them at the very end, and won't be able to see or talk to them for the rest of your life, and the accomplishments we made along the way to better our lives and show that it was worth it. This leads us to Ember's memory of Garden Central Station and the Vivisteria tree, the only thing that can thrive in any environment or element, but wasn't allowed to do so because fire people just weren't. It really scared her because of course people at that age didn't actually understand such hatred that people had for other elements, or in this case of Peter's childhood, people hating other races or ethnicities for some reason that you really don't know why at that very age in your life, just showcasing the experiences they felt at the time, which was very real. The element of our lives, of our characters, so that we can actually understand them better, to tell a story from a unique point of view that doesn't actually need to be a centerpiece message, but more of a character's journey and life in this situation. And Wade sees the anger and emotions that Ember displays plays as an actual good thing, where his emotions tells him something he's not ready to hear, which of course sets up more of Ember's character and abilities that tries to set her path forward towards something that she doesn't know she wants yet. So then after this, we see them find the source and quickly patch it with sandbags, temporarily solving the problem where Wade asks Ember out on a date, or just hanging out considering he is a water guy and she is a fire girl. I like how she doesn't explicitly state that she will meet him, but we do see in the next scene that she does anyway, revealing her new connection to this very guy, giving us this montage of them actually hanging out. And what I like about this scene is the song that plays in Steal the Show by Lauv, who really captures the love that they actually begin to feel, the part that feels typical and what we actually expected from before, but now know much more considering what the story is actually about regarding love itself. This entire sequence is about realizing more than what we have been told to allow ourselves to actually steal the show or be a part of the spotlight of each other. For the two who actually clearly come from different worlds, but done in a way that actually seems real, not like the fluff we usually experience from other movies or in Disney animation itself with their typical love stories, but seems more natural to its flow and the relationship that truly develops in life. That was also elevated at the end by Thomas Newman's entire score of the film, which is truly one of the most beautiful parts of the movie. Where of course before this, for the most part, us Pixar fans actually knew him scoring things like Finding Nemo and Dory, and also the last Pixar love story itself in WALL-E, where his music really captures the connection between characters in the film, and of course in this one between Ember and Wade, and the world and the element that really mixes the flavors of the world and the variety of instruments that they use, ending with Ember walking down under the train where water spills over, signifying her slow connection with Wade, yearning for its forbidden touch. This then leads us to the next day where the water spill actually comes back since the sandbags actually couldn't hold for long, and the fact that Wade messed up with the construction crew who won't actually help, where Wade finally meets Bernie for the first time, where of course as expected, it actually begins rough due to his hatred of water and the fact he might be an inspector that Ember was chasing, potentially shutting down the shop, disguising himself instead as a food inspector, testing the spicy food which he waters down, later angering him and banning him from the shop. This scene actually carries a lot of elements from Peter's life again, which is noticeable from his father, but actually mainly his mother, due to her not actually open up to his own wife when they actually first met, because the reality was his father was more accepting of her, but still also carried elements like Bernie of actually getting words wrong, considering his first language is Korean, but not actually caring much after that, learning English along the way.
I think he's lying through his feet.
Teeth.
Whatever.
An aspect many carry when you do come from a different place, having a different language, and then living differently from those around you in this new country, where the children are really the translators and mediators between those two worlds. And it's all done to just showcase the struggles getting worse for Ember, as he tries to desperately solve the problem before the dream of their family actually dies, and possibly her father with it, with the broken heart. The ever-present conflict of her trying to live up to the legacy that was being brought for her. This is then the realization of what our characters can do when Wade actually expresses not being able to fix what he lost himself with her father, while she still has the chance to own up to that, to state the truth and what she actually really wants in her life, expressing how she feels that it is a burden to live up to her family and what they actually left behind, demonstrating how she shapes the sand into glass like a Vivisteria, and revealing how she can actually repair the crack. The best thing about this is how Wade is a reflection of Ember actually knowing what she actually wants in her life that she just doesn't want to admit yet because of that family aspect she has to hold dear. And of course, as expected, she does successfully seal the crack with the glass she did, keeping a renewed hope with the thing that Wade saved that she made herself, reminding her of something special that actually came from her hands, ensuring that her father could actually now rest easy, where she joins Wade and his family to await the news. This really showcases the side that Wade actually comes from compared to Ember's family from where it was actually built from, portrayed as a pretty privileged, well-off family, representing how water actually came to the city first, being mainly built on it as it is the case of the earth, and actually how fire came last. It demonstrates a lot more in that culture to how some actually act, where of course Wade's uncle has that hint of racism by assuming that Ember actually spoke well off for someone who is fired, where she actually explains that she did live here and speak it all her life.
Say that you speak so well and clear.
Where it's not more like he hates them personally, but more of ignorant to how other people really are towards others, like Asian Americans in this case, and assuming they only speak their native tongue when they come to a city like New York.
Yep, it's amazing what talking in the same language your entire life can do.
And of course, because of this, everyone does look on upon him with disgust, which he actually shows regret for. Which is actually nice to see for someone who actually means well, but just like so many others, ignorant to how people are towards immigrants and their offspring born in the same country and the city, just trying to find a better life for themselves just as much as they are. Just trying to actually understand how people are and how they live. And this is the point where Ember actually showcases her abilities to the family, where she actually repairs the broken glass and reshapes it, impressing them greatly to what she could do, proving Wade's point of being special, continuing to grow their love, as well as successfully fixing the problem after Gale calls, where Wade's mother actually offers her an opportunity for an internship with her glassmaking abilities due to her connection, officially providing her with a new path in her life that she would actually want, which to her regret, she feels conflicted by going home, where Cinder actually discovers Ember had been seeing the water guy. And this is the moment where she really realizes what her temper had been telling her the entire time, how she really can't run the shop because that's not what she really wants at all, where all this time she had been trying to actually live to fulfill her father's dream, to make him proud of the legacy that he built and building upon that over time. But now with her abilities and her new opportunities, that instead comes into conflict with that, even if it is the path that she really wants to take, as shown by her own emotions and what she demonstrated, that she loves to actually do this, but she has to sacrifice it to fulfill the one done by her father to actually come here. A constant never-ending battle where you need to value your family over your needs. It's then where we see her mother try to show her that Wade and her cannot work out by doing her love test, but then finding out that it is true love by how he actually demonstrates it, showcasing that they do love each other to their mother, but hiding them after Bernie comes down preparing to retire for Ember to actually run the shop, and putting those conflicts in front of her yet again. He then explains more of the backstory to when he actually left Element City, where he did this big bow to his father, the highest form of respect when he actually leaves his own home. This is quite possibly one of the most important elements of the entire movie that will be repeated later on towards the end. A move that Peter's father actually did when he went on the plane, which is a very important thing in the family at the time when he left, where instead here in the movie, Bernie's father actually did not actually return to bow, looking upset at his son's decision, thinking he would actually lose who they are, lose their own culture and heritage for something that is new, where that wasn't the case with what he actually built that his family actually never got to see, that he remained fire as any other, but just sought a better opportunity in life that others couldn't understand, something he doesn't want that to happen to Ember either, supporting her instead to have his blessing. It's really a heartbreaking moment in the film, thinking you aren't good enough for your family, thinking that you would lose something that you actually tried to gain, tried to do your best for your own family, where they don't appreciate what you had done and will be gone from your life forever just because of those decisions, where those decisions themselves in the film really reflect well on that and truly become the strongest points of the film. Where another thing I actually forgot about this is how often Ember says father in Firish as Ashfa.
Wow, Ashfa.
Which, as many pointed out, including Peter himself, is actually derived from Appa in Korean, which of course actually meant dad, showcasing even more to why Koreans really connected with this film and with Peter's own life and his parents, where it truly is astounding at this point that it actually has connected so well in Korea, even if it did relate to an immigrant story of those actually leaving home like Korea itself in this film, but actually understanding where they are today and who they are in their culture, where it really leaves Ember more burdened than ever, trying to actually uphold her father's wishes after understanding what happened with her grandfather, who refused to actually acknowledge the respect his son actually gave when he left. It's something many families actually relate to with what their parents expect out of them, where if you don't actually follow those wishes, then you would virtually get disowned by them in one shape or form, not fulfilling what they actually wanted that they built for themselves, where she feels obligated to give up her dreams to actually fulfill that and not actually break any connections to her own family whom she respects dearly, where she tries to go back to Wade to express this, who sees this and still reflects on her to where she actually needs to go in life to figure out who she is, represented by this line.
Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life?
This encourages her to actually see the Vivisteria with Wade's offer, who genuinely cares for others no matter what, despite what had actually happened long ago when Water actually guarded and banned those from actually seeing it. And as expected, it does become the most beautiful thing that she was able to see, a representation of living life the way she wants, inspiring Wade to encourage him to try and touch Ember. Although not realistically possible in the sense of what we know, they show that they actually can, which represents the love that they have, finding someone that they want, culminating in the true meaning of the love story that is being presented. But also realizing that at the same time, she still has the duty to take over her father's shop soon, trying to put the blame of all of this and actually giving up her father's dream on living for Wade rather than the truth of herself, because of how she actually feels she owes it to live up to what was being built from the ground that her father did, rather than accept it from the top as Wade's mother provided.
I cannot throw all of that away just for you!
It really represents this toxic relationship these families have because of how she expresses everything that they themselves gave up was for her that Wade actually doesn't understand, where she actually forgets the important detail that they themselves moved in the same situation to live. The mindset of trying to better yourself but to preserve what you personally built without letting others want to do to succeed in their own life, and why many stick to the roles that we usually associate with certain people. That it doesn't allow them to grow, because then if they don't decide to do that, then they will be disowned forever. And that is something you don't want, because once it's gone, you cannot regain it at all for the rest of your life. And it brings us to the moment where she's able to be celebrated to take over the shop, fulfilling this dream she supposedly has to uphold before Wade actually comes back to try to prove how much he loves her, where he really wants her to embrace to what she has now and what she wants herself, what she really feels inside that is still being bottled up in front of her parents, but rejects that and expresses that she doesn't love him in this situation where the glass starts to break at the crack. Or of course we know, and Cinder actually reveals that this is not true at all, where it is true love between them, but only does this to try to uphold the tradition and make her father happy, not wanting to actually fail her parents or what they sacrificed themselves, or repeating the mistakes of the past such as her grandfather again, where as a result she causes Wade to leave and her father instead to keep the shop and unretire despite his poor health, leaving everything broken and her helpless with this constant struggle of this gift being toward to what she had and what she wanted, but seemingly giving both of them up because she didn't know what to do. The never-ending constant struggle to try to live up to the ideals that life had brought up to you, until the crack actually breaks loose, and then she has to save Firetown. This is where we see the sequence her trying her best, with Wade actually returning to actually help, where despite what she had actually expressed earlier, he still cared deeply for Ember, helping her out with whatever he can, where they get trapped as a result of trying to save the blue flame. We see that she tries her best, but it becomes too hot for Wade to actually live, where she finally admits her love of him and a representation of actually accepting what she wants herself and loves finally.
I love you, Wade.
Where of course, Wade actually disappears and of course leaves her heartbroken at the moment in front of her family. And it's the moment where she finally tells her father about her wishes, crying about her father's dream and being a bad daughter, failing in every conceivable way, but also revealing that this was actually never it in the first place, and the dream was more about her from the very beginning. A new life for his family, which is the height of understanding of what our parents did for us, no matter what we actually think. It's not about a business or a specific job that they want, but it's about the life of their offspring, the stuff that actually gives us true meaning in life itself. It's not something that's realistically what happens at all in life and other families that we know, but this part is just more of the understanding of what it actually really was all about, whether they actually knew it or not, and especially in the case of Peter's family with what they did to support him as an artist and animator. And like always in this instance, they did actually have to end with the typical Disney Pixar style, with Wade actually revived and then we're embracing with a kiss, where Ember can actually finally live her dreams with Wade. And although like many others, I do have my problems with this short-lived resolution and other characters where Bernie actually never apologizes to Wade, or the overall issues with the third act itself with the action of the water leak, I found myself completely fine with it because it's not always about that and more about the acceptance of both parties of just who we are and what we actually live for through a new life. And this is something that is finally represented in the end, where she goes with Wade to the internship to really focus on her dreams, where her father instead finally retires happily, putting the store in good hands with friends who are actually regular customers. Similar to the fact of how it was revealed that the shop Peter's dad actually built is now run by different people today, since of course people like him actually did go to do different things in their own life, which led to the creation of this very movie. And despite her reservations to keep her father happy about what might happen, he of course still encourages her to go, accepting what she wants to do with her life like he did all those years ago, ending of course with the big bow once again, finally actually doing better than the previous generations to accept what they are doing and the sacrifices that they would make along the way, leaving them to actually live their dream, finally letting go, knowing that she will always carry who she is no matter where she goes, where she does take the step forward, mirroring her father yet again. Well, that and of course reminding us that Claude was the reason everything actually took place and why the film actually succeeded in the first place. Good job, Disney. But in short, Elemental is truly a film that proved us wrong in some way. It of course may not be the straight success that Pixar had before with previous films, and of course a financial one at the box office, but its comeback story is truly one of the best to come out of this year, at a time where major trust in major film studios like Disney has gotten seriously low, where the damage they had done to studios like Pixar in that process is really unforgivable. It's one where I was glad to be wrong in my initial opinions about the story and my own journey to discover what the film was about that showed more to be seen. I mean, this doesn't mean it's the greatest film I've seen this year, and it's still not reaching the heights of Pixar's past or Disney's own greatest, but it still remains to be a positive light that I enjoyed for something quite so relatable in life. A simple, good quality story about those who actually sacrificed for you to live the life that you have now and will continue to do so in the future generation. And of course, learning of the details of director Peter Sohn's own life relating to those elements, and of course learning more about the connection to Korea and their own enjoyment and connection to the film, truly elevated this film for me to something more, relating to what I actually want to accomplish in my own life to make my family proud in my own unique way, just like what I can do with this YouTube channel and my passion for Disney storytelling and storytelling of any type. It's a movie that really just needed more love by the company promoting it at first to show us more about what it was about, or if it truly did in another time, then it actually could have done far more better and reached beyond what we know. It still became a true testament to what Pixar could do to actually provide and capture the young and old of any age and stories around the world. And I don't doubt with the success they actually had with this film, they will continue to actually explore these characters in some form via things like a series or a sequel, which will definitely be a success if anything is to actually go by, and quite possibly beat the Frozen films in Korea to actually hold the #1 title for animation and films in general in the country. One that actually could be done more to explore more aspects of the character that people actually didn't find fleshed out much, where if they do, then Elemental can truly be a very successful franchise in the future. Elemental is a film that truly worked because it connected to all of us with life and living for what we want through love that can be shown in any situation, where it will truly stand as a great Pixar classic for many years to come. And with that all said, I'm all done, so goodbye.